This is episode 26 of On the DOT, your go-to source for information about the Indiana Department of Transportation. Every month we take you on a deep dive into the inner workings of the agency to answer your burning questions about roads, bridges, and everything in between. On this month's episode, Jeremy McGuffey gives us a closer look into the historic winter weather system that Indiana experienced a few weeks ago, and also the processes, procedures, and partnerships necessary to be successful. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy the latest installment of On the DOT. Standing by with Jeremy McGuffey, and Jeremy, I don't know your actual title. I probably should have asked that just before I pushed the record button. So can you share your title and a little bit about what you do here at INDOT?
Yeah, so my official title is Winter Operations Manager for INDOT. I have also been redefining that role as the road weather operations program manager. Because something that people don't tend to realize is that it's not just winter weather that affects Indiana. We have high wind events, we have flooding, we experience weather across all seasons. So that's something that we've been working on here lately.
Yeah, what's that old phrase? If you don't like the weather in Indiana, stick around for a couple hours and it'll change. Something like that.
That's true, and I will say from experience, I have lived through an event that was we saw negative 10 degrees with wind chill all the way up to the next day, less than 24 hours, it was 70 degrees out. So that's definitely true for Indiana.
I think I saw that memory on my Facebook page the other day. So Jeremy, we're actually here to talk about quite a few things, but mainly we're going to get to Pathfinder here in a little bit. But before we do that, I wanted to kind of just talk to you and get your thoughts on this previous weather event. We had statewide what was called a historic weather event. And from our perspective, or from the general public's perspective, there was a lot of snow. It was a big inconvenience for a long time. From INDOT's perspective, I don't know that we were handling things differently, but it was a different kind of storm than we usually see. Can you talk a little bit about, just kind of debrief us on what you saw statewide in your role as winter operations manager, but also talk a little bit about, how we did in the process.
Yeah, so first of all, I do want to say that I'm proud of our team because while this was a historic event and while it could have been, while it was an inconvenience, it could have been much worse.
For sure.
Something that was on everyone's minds leading up to this event was the recent event earlier in January on I-95 in Virginia. And, if you recall, that shut the interstate down for nearly an entire day. And there were people stranded out there.
And I think there was something similar that happened in Georgia a few years back. I do remember a story about Chipper Jones having to go save Freddie Freeman on his four-wheeler. So shout out. I'm a huge Braves fan. Sorry.
No, yeah, that's a good call out. So I think the general theme is that none of us are immune to this from happening. It happened in Kentucky a couple of years back, too, where people were actually stranded for 72 hours in some cases, and the National Guard had to get out and help. So I'm super proud of our team. This didn't occur in Indiana despite us, leading up to this, we were all worried that it could potentially happen, and there was a lot of planning that went into this storm. The weather event was very similar. In some areas, we actually received more snow than what happened in I-95. And down south, as you're aware, where you're from, there was quite a bit of ice, and that could have been disastrous. But our teams were quick. They got out ahead of the storm. They were patrolling while it was still raining, just in case it switched over. And, we stayed out through the entire duration of the storm and past that to continue cleanup. For nearly a day after this event, there was blowing snow, in some cases up to a couple of feet deep up on our northern routes. So, we had people that were back to back working, and I'm super proud of them.
Yeah, for sure. And most people don't realize how different it really is from area to area to area. I had a very unique experience this time around covering for our Crawfordsville district during the event, as well as covering my normal duties in Vincennes. And it's amazing to me, Linton and Terre Haute areas kind of got the same, but the further out you went from that central area, you saw completely different conditions. I learned what a V-plow is. I've never seen one of those ever. And so I learned what that is because they had, major snow drifts on, I can't remember what the road was now, but it was in Lafayette area. Mm-hmm. So, talk a little bit about that, because a lot of people, I don't think, realize the difference between what we get in say the northern parts of the state versus what we get in Vincennes area.
Yes, so that's an interesting dynamic that Indiana has and some states don't have. From north to south, we have these microclimates, and weather hits the state differently depending on which area it's coming through. Whenever I'm in my peer groups nationally, Clear Roads, for example, we have a whole bunch of states and my counterparts at the table, and we talk through some of these dynamics. And some states, even larger, than us, they'll have a single type of weather event that affects them. And from north to south in Indiana, you have a lot of ice and sleet and mixed weather down there in southern Indiana. As you move towards like central Indiana area, you start to get slightly more snow, and then up north you typically get the deeper snows. On top of that, most of the northern portion of the state experiences quite a bit of lake effect snow. And if you've not lived through that, if you've not been in one of those events, it is pretty significant. I do want to call out, I was looking at weather data the other day actually for up north, and South Bend area, where they experience quite a bit of that lake effect. About 85 to 90% of their snow that they get each year comes from lake effect, not from snow events, not from storm systems. So, they may get 6 to 20 inches of snow each year from the storm events, but from lake effect they can get overnight a foot of snow for several days straight, and that's just an interesting dynamic. If you don't live anywhere near the Great Lakes, you can't really comprehend that level of intensity.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that people don't think about with the lake effect snow, it's very flat up there. And so you start talking about drifting and things like that. I mean, you could be in a mess in a hurry.
Oh, quite for sure. So, even during this last storm event that we had last week, I think in the deepest areas we may have gotten 15 to 17 inches of snow from that actual event. But from the drifting and the blowing, it could be up to 5 feet deep. Some of the guys reported that the snow was so deep that it was going over the plows. So that is something that people have to be aware of. And that's why we specifically told people to stay off the roads if they could.
Yeah, and that's why I learned what a V-plow was. Lafayette, if you look at West Central's social medias from that event, they had a V-plow out, and it looked like I guess a tractor. It wasn't necessarily a truck, but the snow was up. I mean, it looked like it was burying it. That was how deep it was. So definitely something that people, I think sometimes, especially those of us in southern Indiana, we don't see where we're at. But also, I mean, there's different perspectives either way. Jeremy, I wanted to talk to you about one more thing about this storm, and then we will take our first break and move on. In our district specifically, you mentioned earlier that we had people out patrolling, kind of waiting on that changeover from rain to ice. That makes everything a little more difficult because you can't pre-treat before a storm. And when you've got the amount of ice, we were forecasted to get up to like 3/4 of an inch of ice in some areas. When you've got rain before the ice, how important is it to get pre-treatment on the road? And what do you do in that situation where you don't have the opportunity necessarily to do it well in advance?
Yep, that is a great question. So with those types of events, you have a razor-thin margin for error. If you are out there and timing is wrong, the roads can freeze up on you very quickly. The water's, from the rain's already on the road surface. As soon as those temps drop below freezing, that road surface will turn into an ice rink really quickly, and it'll keep building up through the rest of the event. So timing is everything, and that's why we didn't see as many issues down there, is because our crews were already out on the roads. As soon as they saw that switchover occur is when they started to apply material. Because like you said, if we start dropping salt or brine or whatever in the middle of a rain event, we're not going to see any value. It's going to get washed off. So that razor thin margin, our crews are out there. They start applying as soon as they see that switch over, and we really benefited from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you from my experience personally, our people did a great job.
Agreed.
Can't say enough about how I mean, it was probably one of the smoothest weather events we've had since I've been at INDOT. So, well, we're going to take our first break here, Jeremy. When we come back, I want to talk about Pathfinder and how we used that during this previous event, and maybe just give the public a general update on what it actually is. I don't know that everybody's heard of Pathfinder. So we'll be right back with more on the DOT.
Before 1989, INDOT was known as the Indiana Department of Highways, but highways became transportation, and our logo tells the story why. Only one of the four icons, the car, represents Indiana roadways. The airplane, the train, and the bus represent some of the other modes of transportation that our multimodal division helps manage. Along with the Federal Highway Administration, INDOT works with federal agencies for rail, aviation, freight, and transit. To learn more, visit us online at multimodal.indot.in.gov. INDOT, we're more than just Hoosier Roads.
In 2019, distracted driving was a factor in nearly 2,000 injury crashes in Indiana, killing more than 20 people. To make Hoosier Roads safer, hands-free while driving is now the law. That means you can't have a mobile device in your hand while driving. You can still use a phone or tablet in your car, but you must use a speakerphone, headset, Bluetooth, or other hands-free technology. Go hands-free. Learn about the new law at handsfreeindiana.com.
Welcome back to On the DOT. Our guest this month is Jeremy McGuffey. He's our Winter Operations Manager, and I hope I said that correctly. Or is it Winter Operations Director?
No, it's just manager,
okay.
Unfortunately.
Okay, fair enough. I wanted to make sure. I'm the world's worst about that, Jeremy, just so you're aware. I think I've given everyone kind of like a nickname title. Jeremy Hunter was the bridge guru, things like that. So, but anyway, we talked a little bit not a little bit, we talked a lot about the winter weather event in the last segment. But one of the unique things about this particular event is that we used a different approach when it comes to our communications with other agencies. And that's the Pathfinder. And Jeremy, first and foremost, give us kind of an overview of what the Pathfinder is, and have we used it before this year?
Sure. Yeah, that's a big question too, because Pathfinder is a huge program. If I had all day, then I could keep talking about it. But to sum things up, Pathfinder is a program that was created by the Federal Highway Administration maybe like 6 or 7 years ago. And this came out of one of the Olympics games. It was kind of the culmination of a bunch of planning between the DOT there and a lot of the other agencies to ensure that the Olympic Games went off without an issue. So Federal Highway ended up, because of those successes, they created this program called Pathfinder. And essentially, Pathfinder is just a partnership between state DOT and their local weather resources, whether it's the National Weather Service or private weather forecasters. In INDOT's case, we actually have both. So we were able to utilize both of them when we kicked off this program. So in terms of like history for us, INDOT began planning for Pathfinder about 1.5 years ago. We had a representative from the Indianapolis National Weather Service as well as our private partner. And then we also had some district representation as well. Your counterpart from LaPorte, Adam Parkhouse, he had helped us with some of the kickoff events. We did some workshops with National Weather Service with internal stakeholders. So like a lot of our district directors were involved with kicking things off and planning for full implementation. We put together a guidelines document, some other supporting documents, trying to define the program in terms of how Indiana would use it. And once we did that, we set up an implementation meeting where we officially started Pathfinder, and that was just this past fall. Fortunately for Indiana, Pathfinder, we haven't had too many large-scale snow events. But to explain how we use Pathfinder, I guess. Pathfinder is, for INDOT, Pathfinder is solely us focused on getting good information out to the public. INDOT's done this great by ourselves, But one of the things that we've learned through Pathfinder is that the public typically listens more when you hear a consistent message from more than one person or trusted authority. So for us, we can put out a good message, but we can only reach so many people. And those people we do reach, it's up to them whether they're going to listen. But if that same person hears the same message from both INDOT, from the state police, from National Weather Service, that really drills it into their mind that, this is important, this is what I need to hear and listen to. So we focus on larger events, things that are going to have a significant impact on traffic. And we coordinate heavily to make sure we understand the forecast, everybody involved, and that we can get a good message out to the public on how the weather is going to impact roads and traffics, and allow them to make better decisions.
Yeah, and I want to kind of go back to what you said about how we get messages out through multiple agencies or multiple trusted sources. I think the proof is really in what we saw with this previous event. The governor announced that this was going to be a historic event. He had, the then Commissioner Joe McGinnis, kind of reinforced that message, and then, state police. All of us, it was different in the fact that, as a social media manager, as a communications person, oftentimes you find that the other agencies are kind of doing their own thing. State police will really focus solely on, okay, we're seeing slide-offs, we're seeing this, this kind of traffic issue. Whereas INDOT, we're given updates on the storm. Here's what the yellow trucks are doing, things like that. The Pathfinder, it really brought all of that together, much like what you were saying. When the proof is, you look at social medias, and then everything, like the message was consistent: stay off the roads are bad. It was different this time. And so, was this the first time we had used Pathfinder in that capacity?
Yeah, it really was different this time, and people understood that. People called that out. So in this capacity, this was actually our first statewide, major event since we've had Pathfinder. We've done a couple of calls around the state for smaller, more regional events, but this one was much different because it had that statewide impact. For this storm, there wasn't a square inch of Indiana that didn't see snow or was impacted by the weather. So because of this, we actually went outside of our normal, cadence, and we expanded the group even further. We called in, Department of Homeland Security, state police. We brought them in as partners for this call to help push that message out too, and they did a great job of that. So this Pathfinder call was massive, but it got the point across. We talked through the weather, we talked through how the weather is going to impact the roadways, and then we were able to put that into a consistent message and get it out, which was very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jeremy, what resources has Pathfinder program brought to Indiana? I know we've got, Rusty talks about the National Weather Service chats and things like that, but really, there's been quite a bit of benefit for INDOT as far as helping other agencies kind of see what we're seeing, and also us seeing what they're seeing, but we also get to share in their resources as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one of the secondary benefits that's always been pushed because of Pathfinder is that partnership between those agencies. And INDOT and the National Weather Service, we really took it to the next level by sharing resources. So the National Weather Service provides us a lot more forecasting options and information. We get all of the conference call notifications. We try and participate in all those. We get a lot of their graphics leading up to the storms to tell us, how much they're expecting to see snow-wise. But also National Weather Service chat, which is a huge one for us, allows us to communicate directly with the meteorologists at each of their offices. So it's very often that common that you would get in there and see our folks, sending messages back and forth, telling them, we're seeing this out on the roadways, and the National Weather Service provides us feedback. Okay, well, this is what the forecast is going to look like for the next couple hours. We can ask those questions directly, and I think that's very pivotal for what we were and what we are now.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it also gives us the opportunity to really give real-time updates. So if, say National Weather Service needs to update their forecast or something like that. But it also helps them, I think, understand what we've got going out on the roads as well. Would you agree?
Completely, yeah, and that's always been a major disconnect between the weather community and the DOTs is understanding that what's coming out of the sky isn't always necessarily what's on the road. The National Weather Service will tell you themselves that they're not a road weather forecaster. They can tell us that 6 inches of snow is going to fall, half inch of ice is going to fall, but how that interacts with the pavement is a completely separate science in itself. And so it's really up to us to provide that feedback. If we're getting a heavy snow, we can tell them this is what we're seeing out there on the roads, and they can go back and teach themselves, train themselves, and understand how the two are correlated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that this has forged some really good partnerships as well. I mean, you talked about partnering with National Weather Service and the other agencies that are involved in Pathfinder. But, just outside of Pathfinder in general, I know, we've had some of our sub-district managers in the Vincennes district go ahead and give presentations about that exact topic. Here's how what's falling out of the sky affects what happens on the roads. So I think there's a lot of really good benefit to having these partnerships, and Pathfinder specifically during weather events, but it also helps us build better relationships, I think.
Completely agree. That's something that we've been strong at here at INDOT for a very long time. Like I said, we partnered with the state police, and we've always had a good relationship with them, but this storm helped us build that bond too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jeremy, we're going to take our next break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about things going on within your shop. We'll be right back with more on the DOT.
Drowsy driving is dangerous driving. This is Sergeant Todd Ringel with the Indiana State Police. Driving while drowsy is risky. If you're driving and you notice frequent yawning, or you're having a difficult time keeping your eyes open, you're having a hard time staying in your lane, you may be a drowsy driver. Did you know driving after going more than 20 hours without sleep is the equivalent of driving with a blood alcohol content of 0.08%, which is the legal limit? Please drive responsibly. Don't drive drowsy.
At the Indiana Department of Transportation, it's not all work and no play. INDOT offers employees unmatched work-life balance, competitive benefits, and perks like a 37.5-hour work week, paid holidays, paid time off, career paths, and tuition reimbursement. Entry-level positions start at $19 per hour. CDL drivers can earn even more, so stop grinding and start thriving. Go to indotjobs.com or text INDOT Careers to 468-311 to apply now.
Somebody needs to report that pothole.
Why aren't they mowing the grass in the median?
When are they going to fix this road?
You know there's an easy way to get answers to those questions and report the problems you see on interstates, U.S. routes, and state roads. Dial 1-855-INDOT-4U to talk to a live customer service professional. That's 855-463-6848. Hate talking on the phone or have a fear of human interaction? We've got you covered. Go online to INDOT4U.com to use our Report a Concern tool. You can also report a concern through our INDOT mobile app for iPhone and Android. If you've got questions, we've got answers at 855-INDOT4U or online at INDOT4U.com.
And welcome back to our final segment of On the DOT. Jeremy McGuffey is with us. And Jeremy, we talked about our weather event from the last couple of weeks. We've talked about Pathfinder and that partnership. Let's talk about the question that's on everybody's mind. What's next for INDOT? I mean, this was a huge event. We had to have used a lot of our resources, and I'm talking salt, I'm talking manpower, things of that nature. I mean, we really did a lot more than normal. So what's next? How do we start to replenish? What do we do to start planning for the next one? I mean, just kind of give us an overview of what happens after these big events.
Yeah, sure thing. So I was fortunate enough to be sending reports hourly to the executive staff in the governor's office through this entire storm. And one thing that was clear to me was that we were looking good the entire time. INDOT did not run into a significant truck shortage or labor shortage through this storm. Trucks weren't going down as much as we had predicted.
And I want to stop you right there real quickly just to give a shout out to our mechanics, because they are really the unsung heroes of these winter weather events. They keep these trucks on the road, and then once the storm is over, they're the ones who have to get them back into the condition they were in before the storm. So sorry to interrupt, Jeremy. I just wanted to give a shout out to our mechanics.
No, that's a good call out. The trucks are expensive, and if we can't keep them up, on their maintenance and cleaned up and back out on the road, then it is a significant issue for us. So in terms of like salt and the materials that we use for our winter operations, we're not too bad there either. There are a few locations that are lower than what we would hope for, but that's to be expected because we went through this big storm event. However, our replenishment doesn't seem to be too much of an issue either. Our districts are typically involved in the replenishment directly. They'll work with the vendors to get additional resources and salt ordered. But right now, it doesn't look like it's going to be too much of an issue going forward. I think the lead time isn't as far out as we thought it would be. So I think we'll be in good for whatever next storm Mother Nature decides to throw at us.
Well, let's hope it's not one of these statewide ice and snow events. We need to come up with a nickname for that. We'll discuss it later offline, and we'll get back to the public on that. So, Jeremy, that kind of wraps us up regarding the latest winter weather. But, there's a lot more going on in your shop than just winter weather. You mentioned earlier in the podcast that you've been kind of trying to redefine a little bit about what your role does. And so can you share with us some of the other things you're working on?
Yeah, there's a bunch of cool new initiatives that I've been working towards. I've been trying to really engage our teams year-round, not rather than just winter operations. People always, make the joke, man, it's winter, so it's your busiest season. But to be honest, that's further from the truth. Most of my year is spent in research and development and building the program and making things successful for the season. Once we get into the winter, our crews are great. They do the job. They don't need me to tell them how to do it anymore. So like right now, one of the big initiatives that I kicked off this past year was a monthly series where I'm hoping to educate our teams a little bit more about some of the science behind why things happen, and also some of the new processes and innovations that we've been working on nationally.
And that's a great topic. And again, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we had Phil Ivey on not too terribly long ago talking about the science of winter weather, and he kind of touched on some of those specifics about the science of why things happen. And also previously we've had, some of our AASHTO partners on. Rick Nelson from SciCop was on at one point. And he mentioned that Indiana has been working on some really big innovations for the winter ops community. And I'm assuming that's what you're alluding to.
Yeah, well, that is definitely some of them. Rick's a great resource for us because Rick's lived his entire life helping others with snow and ice. He was actually just telling me a couple weeks ago a story of where he went down to South America to help some rural communities with it. So it's definitely Rick knows his way around the snow and ice community. But specifically, so some of the things that INDOT has led with or led the nation and internationally with has been automation. One of the projects that we're proud of that we're still working on right now is to be able to automate the controls of our big plow trucks. Not so much the driving piece. I don't think we're ready for that. But, the salt application, that is a big piece. It's much easier in our eyes to have a computer do the math and determine what the optimal application rate should be, and just let our drivers focus on safety, driving forward. These trucks are up to 80,000 pounds. Our drivers are, they're running on fumes at that point. They're 12, 16-hour shifts in some cases. And I think we owe it to them to allow them to just focus on driving rather than adjusting application rates, messing with controls in the trucks, and just let them focus on the public and keeping everybody safe out there.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Not to say anything I shouldn't here, but I mean, let's be honest. You mentioned 80,000 pound trucks, and in some places, they get a wheel off the road, it's over for them. I mean, we had a couple examples of that in this previous weather event. So I agree with you. I think it's awesome that we're working on focusing on letting the drivers do more with just driving rather than trying to adjust, how much salt's going down or how much brine's going down. So, Jeremy, what else you got going on?
I think another one that I'm quite excited about is a project that we've been working on with Purdue University to automate the salt stockpile monitoring in our buildings around the state. That's a glimpse that the public doesn't really get that often, is some of the behind the scenes and the logistics behind how our operations work. But, this is an issue nationwide, not just with DOTs, but anybody that holds large quantities of materials is being able to keep track of them. So we built a device with Purdue here recently. It's a LiDAR-based device that we can install on our buildings and take these measurements automatically, accurately, and in near real time. So this saves a lot of labor. The people don't have to go out there and survey these huge piles anymore. We get a more accurate number, so we know how much salt we have, at any point in time. And I can't wait to go statewide with this. Right now, we've been taking the devices around to quite a few separate sites around the state, as well as a couple of local agencies as well to take these measurements, just to test the accuracy and make sure that things are refined enough before we start installing these statewide. But it's going to save a significant amount of money, both in labor and lost material.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, Jeremy, we're measuring salt with LiDAR. We're doing so many different innovative things. What else do we have going on? Is there something else that you can point to really give the public a glimpse into what it's like to be involved with winter operations here in Indiana?
Yeah, so I can tell you the most exciting thing that we've put out to the public here recently is the 511 updates.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't even think about mentioning that.
Yep. So
that has been a huge resource for me.
Yep, we recently redefined that website, but one of the coolest additions that wasn't on the previous 511 is the addition of our snowplow dash cams. And this has been part of an even larger project to get our trucks outfitted with these sensors that can monitor everything that's happening in the truck. So essentially with these dash cams, the public can now get a front seat view of what's going on out on the roadways. And one of the things that I was super excited about when we first announced this was, the ability for people to look at this and use this tool to plan ahead before they even leave their house. Instead of getting out on the roads and hoping for the best, I live on a side street, so by the time I get to a main street, maybe it's clear. I would hope for that to be clear. But you can't always guarantee that. And these conditions change. So being able to sit at your home and look on your phone or your computer and see the road conditions from the dash cams and the people that are driving them, you can definitely ensure that you're going to get your kids to school safely, that you can get to work safely, or adjust your plans if need be. And that just being able to push that message has been very important for us.
Yeah, I agree. And from a communications standpoint, using those pictures on social media has been huge for engagement on our social medias. Also, I really like the fact that it kind of leaves that trail of breadcrumbs as to where the plow has been. So it kind of eliminates that whole, well, I've not seen a plow down this road argument as well. So, it takes 2 to 3 hours for these plows to get around their routes. And so this certainly helps people, I think, get a little bit better of a perspective on what the drivers are seeing.
Oh, yeah. Plowing definitely is a challenge. And I think this will help people realize that, we are out there, we are doing our job. I do want to note there is, with the 511, something else that we're working on is being able to put more weather tools in the public's hands as well. And INDOT already has an existing network of road weather information systems called RWIS for short, and we've been working to get this information on the 511 as well. So hopefully in the next couple of months, that's something that everyone can start to see and utilize in addition to the plow cams.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jeremy, we are about out of time here. Is there any final thoughts you have before we wrap it up here?
Yeah, so I will say, if there was one message that I wanted to get out to everyone, I spent a bunch of time during and after this storm driving around the interstate all over the state, and the one thing that struck me as we need to work on this is leaving snow and ice on top of our cars. I can't tell you how many times I felt like my windshield was going to get busted out because the car in front of me threw a whole chunk of ice at me. It's dangerous, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. I hope that they care about that, but I saw even semis with up to 6 inches of snow on top of the semi that got on the interstate, and it looks like a dust storm all of a sudden, and people can reckon that. It is serious, and I've seen a lot of pictures and videos of where ice chunks have gone through people's windows or windshields when that stuff blows off your cars. So whether you're, an INDOT employee or a member of the public, I believe that this is a very important thing that we can all work on, is to get our cars cleaned off before we hop on the highways.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jeremy, thank you for being on, and we wish you the best of luck in the next weather event, and thank you for coming on the podcast to talk about what you do.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
This has been On the DOT, a production of the Indiana Department of Transportation. For more information, please visit our website at indot.in.gov. For the latest updates on road conditions or construction, you can download our INDOT mobile app for Apple and Android devices. Submit your roadway concerns by calling 1-855-INDOT-FOR-YOU or online at indot4u.com. Find all of that information in the description of this episode. Full episodes of On the DOT are available on YouTube by searching for INDOT. You can also follow INDOT and all 6 of our districts on Facebook and Twitter. If you like what you're hearing, please be sure to leave us a rating on your favorite podcast platform. Join us again every third Thursday for new episodes of On the DOT. Until then, travel safely, and thank you for joining us on the DOT.